Welcome to Wild Places. I'm your host, Brad Clement. This podcast is presented by Panji Foundation, saving snow leopards, helping communities. So today we welcome Sophie Binder. And Sophie, you were born and raised in France. You live in St. Louis, Missouri today. So I totally can't do justice to how to pronounce your last name. How would you say it in French?
So in French, I would say Binder, but the name has a German origin. So Binder will do just fine, or Binder
Okay.
if you
Okay.
really want to
Yes. Yeah. I botch it every time. And ever since I've known you, I've just said Sophie Binder. But I love the French
It's close
pronunciation.
enough.
So what we've done so far to date with this podcast is just have conversations with people that are actively engaged, whether it be in conservation or adventure, basically exploring really interesting facets of the natural world. Clearly, Panji Foundation is a conservation organization geared towards snow leopard, threatened species in the Himalaya, but the broader topics of why people are passionate about the outdoors really fascinates us. And what I love about you is you are a tremendous rock climber. You're a passionate outdoors person. And yet I also find you personally to be really one of the most, like, really one of the world's great artists.
Oh my
You
God.
sketch, you paint.
No pressure. Oh, Jesus.
No, I mean, this is true. I think you're one of the most underrepresented, least known artistic phenomenons. I mean, your artwork is incredible and you're so prolific. I've personally witnessed you sketch these amazing drawings while you're sitting in a car in the Red Rock Conservation Area in Las Vegas, looking at the rocks that inspire you. And you just do it perfectly and so beautifully.
Oh,
And I just am amazed by that. Which in your life, which came first, climbing and this love of the outdoors, or your artistic outlet of sketching and watercolor?
oh, most definitely the artistic. I think I was born with a pen and a pencil in my hand, or very close to. I had the inspiration of having a grandfather who was an amazing watercolorist who I never met because he died before I was born, but his watercolor are all over the house of were all over the house of my parents, my family. One of my great grandfather was a great artist as well, and then I have a couple of siblings who do art. One professionally, the other one just as a hobby, but he's really good. So I had all this inspiration when I was growing up, and my mom would have told you that I was like 5 years old, and I would arrive when they would take get their coffee after lunch, which was the quiet time. The kids were supposed to be out, and the parents were having their quiet time. And I would come, and after they had coffee, I would push everything out of the coffee table, and I would settle down, and I would draw because I was such, I think, a social person that I didn't really want to do this just by myself in my room. So I had to be surrounded, but I was in my own little world. So I really started to draw really early on. And the love of the outdoors, I would say, came pretty fast because of my parents. I'm number 8 of 8 kids. So vacation were limited to very inexpensive endeavors, and we would go to the mountains and to the Pyrenees. And friends of ours would lend us a log cabin, and we would stay there, and then we would go on those amazing hikes, and or we would camp. And so my parents, every year, that was our vacation. And so they instilled in us the respect and the love of the outdoors really early on. So
And I've seen many of your pieces of artwork. They cover a wide spectrum of subject matter, from people and portraits to birds. But one thing I've noticed about you is and maybe it's that I'm drawn to this too, and maybe I don't notice your full catalog of work, but it seems to me anyway that much of your work is centered around the outdoors and nature. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so, especially since I started to get into wood burning.
Mhm.
That really felt it felt to me like it was the medium where I was going to be able to expand that love of the mountains and the outdoors that I had. Um, that said, it's really interesting that you said it covers a spectrum in subject. And one thing that I have been kind of, it's not a struggle, but I, I look at artists and, you say this artist has this style. You can recognize the style of an artist, but because they choose a medium and they stick with it. And that's all they do for their entire career. And I've always thought it's interesting because I feel like I'm interested in so many different medium depending on what I'm doing and what the subject is, that I cannot stick to just one medium. And so does that make me an artist with no style? I don't know. It feels to me like it might be my French way. We call that touche à tout in French, touch it all. We like as French people, I've noticed compared to American like specialties, very specialized. I encounter people in work that are very specialized, and they know their subject so well, and they do it so well. But then when you step out of that border of their subject, it's somebody else is going to take care of it. And
Mhm.
and my way to see things is that, okay, I have a subject, the mountains, for example. Right now, all I want to do when I do mountains is wood burning, because I just want to burn those lines and spend hours burning those lines and feeling like I am in the middle of those mountains, or feeling like I'm spending hours climbing that mountain. When I do birds, I want to do watercolor or ink pen because it's much faster. It's a yeah, it's a quicker medium, and I feel like a bird is just this ephemeral, animal that you see and then you don't see, it disappears. So, and I don't know, I mean, some people say, well, yeah, you don't have like do you have a particular style? I'm like, wow, I don't know. When it comes uh,
You clearly though have a very emotional bond to each piece. I mean, you describing feeling like you're in the mountains or connecting with this bird that is going to be ephemeral and here 1 second, gone the next. That's a very emotional connection.
Yeah, it is, and I hope that it shows in the art, and and then from there, then there is portraits, and portraits is another thing that can be extremely emotional. Um, and for that, I run the gamut in the style and the medium that I choose. I've done portraits with wood burning, as you know. The last one being the one of my mother, which, talking about emotional, that was extremely emotional. But I think in this case, the the medium was perfect because it is such a slow medium that I could step away, come back, step away, come back, add a line, be afraid. Just sometimes the piece was just screaming at me and scared me. So
Okay.
I had to kind of
Okay.
step away. Um, so and I think I really like that jumping around with different medium. Plus, it's fun. It's really fun to discover, to get yourself into this more unknown territory, and I think that reflects on life too. I like to go places sometimes without really knowing what is going on there.
Mhm.
I think it's more exciting than having reservation everywhere and knowing exactly what the plan is going to be and stuff like that. This is the adventurous part where it exists in art too. When you're facing the page or piece of wood or whatever, it is an adventure. Sometimes it doesn't end up being what you think it was going to be.
You're
And
also exposing yourself, and you're opening up vulnerability to
oh yeah,
people's interpretation or even criticism of your
oh
work
yeah,
and who you are.
oh yeah, insecurity of the artist. That's right there. All the time. It's extremely interesting to think that some people don't realize how insecure artists can be. um, People judgment is something very powerful.
Mhm.
and uh, um, and of course, there are judgments that you just don't decide not to care about. There are people who just are decides to criticize or to love no matter what. There is that too. There's that other side. There's people who just will be negative no matter what. But there's also people who say, "Oh my God, this is beautiful," and you're looking at what you did, and you're like, "No, it's not."
I know, speaking for myself, my own experience as a photographer, filmmaker, I've sometimes spent so many hours trying to get just the right shot for a corporate client, let's
Right.
say. But then in that process, I'll take a bunch of other photos, and some of them are taken just off the cuff immediately.
Yeah.
And the client likes the one that's off the cuff. And yet I'm looking at this one that I feel is a masterpiece, and
Right.
they don't pay any attention to it. And so, sometimes it's just, oh well, that's
Yeah. I
how
mean,
it is.
the opinion of the masses is very interesting, and I've experienced that this year with all the daily sketches that I've been doing and that I've posted daily. And it's been really interesting for me to see the one that had got the most response from people were not always the one that I thought would be.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's very interesting.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Since we've been in this realm of a pandemic, largely shut down from most of the world, and we're all now working, living in our own cocoons, whether that's our own home or some very much smaller area than we've been used to over the last year. Every day you've been doing a sketch, and in fact, last year you produced a calendar of your sketches, which is just fascinating to me. What inspired you to do these quarantine drawings?
So I started, I mean, on Wednesday, it will be 365 days ago.
Mhm,
So I'm reaching the year. I started because at the very beginning of the lockdown, it was very extremely isolating. And I live by myself and work at home, so that part didn't change. But I am not an antisocial person, as you know, and I like to see my friends. And I was cooped up, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to do something so I can have this baseline of things that I do every day, maybe, and push me to be productive in one
mhm,
sense. So I thought I'll do that for a month. So that was my first thing I'm gonna do. I want to do one sketch a day a month. My God, that would be amazing if I get through the month. And so I started to do this, and then the beginning of the pandemic was very emotional for me. I lost my mother right at the beginning, and so I started to see that it was something that was sustaining me in the world of sanity to do that every day, and also was a very interesting exercise of observation. Just what I'm going to joke today, you
mhm,
know, um, anything could be interesting. Nothing was mundane. Nothing was something that I would look at stuff and like, wow, I'm going to draw my keys or something like, and attach a little message to it or whatever. And next thing I know, it's been a year and I've done it every day. Um, and I'm very happy and pretty proud to have sustained that
mhm,
that every day. And sometimes the drawings are very personal. Sometimes the drawings have something to do with the social, happenings, which didn't. There was not a lack of it this this past year. And now I'm kind of dreading actually Wednesday, which is my day 1 year, and I'm thinking, maybe I should just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to do a book out of it. So I think I'm going to do a book out of the 365. So
Nice.
it's kind of a round number of 1 year.
When
Yeah.
did you realize that you could turn this artistic talent into a profession?
That I didn't know that I wanted to extremely early on.
Mhm.
Like I was in high school and I knew I wanted to do something. I wanted to have a career that would have something to do with art. Now, of course, all you hear is, you're not going to make money with art, blah, blah. So I started to think about the way I can make a living with art. And so when I was in high school, I had, I was taking art classes, and then I went to a school that was a design school, and my option was commercial art. And so that's what I studied. I studied, advertising art and things like this. And as soon as I hit my first job in that market, I was just, well, that is not for me. That is not my world.
Yeah.
World of sharks and people would it was just not my thing. And then I was lucky because I met, I had an option to go work with an American in design on the theme park industry, and it was very interesting. And then I learned as I went, really, because design was not what I had studied
Mhm.
originally. But yeah, but I knew very early on that was
There was
what I
something
wanted to
there.
do. Yeah, originally what I wanted to do was cartoons.
Mhm.
And then I visited the Disney studio early on, the first time I came to America. And I was already a designer by then, but I saw this guy working on Roger Rabbit leg for like 20 minutes, just act, there was the old style animation with a cell. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Well, what's funny is in wanting to interview you on a podcast that has to do with wild places, wilderness, conservation, how do you connect the dots from speaking to an artist you simply admire to showing how your work and your energy has really positively affected just what we're about, conservation, these exotic, wonderful, threatened places around the world. Some of your corporate clients have been, for example, Patagonia.
Mhm.
You've
Yeah,
drawn sketches for their catalogs,
yeah,
and when you think of companies that produce gear for the outdoors and people interested in the outdoors, Patagonia is such a great benchmark of what they do also for conservation and
yeah,
saving the planet. And then
absolutely.
I think of a recent job you did. You were hired to come out to Colorado and not only study but sketch and draw and document uh, wildlife, particularly bats, in Colorado's newest state park. And I love how it doesn't matter what you do, if you're a biologist, if you're a mountain guide, if you're someone teaching kids outdoor education in local school districts, or if you're an artist and you have a passion, how you can really steer your energy to things that matter to you. And I think you've done such a wonderful job. Can you talk a little bit about the work you did in Colorado?
Yeah, thank you. That project was my dream project, really. I went to the southern part of Colorado where there is now the new state park. I don't know what the official name, if it's Fisher Peaks State Park, but it's right by the border of New Mexico.
Yeah, very
And my
close to the
friend,
city of Trinidad.
right,
Yeah.
Trinidad, exactly. And my friend Andrea, who is a wildlife biologist and works for CSU in Fort Collins, invited me to come as an artist and for climbing my climbing knowledge as well, because we were exploring this new park that was not open yet. So so it's like it's dreamy because there's no one around, and we are in the middle of nowhere for 6 days, and I'm there with this woman who has a knowledge of the environment. It's like an encyclopedia. It's like my own little encyclopedia. Oh, what is that bird? And then she gives me the story and the way the birds acts and sing, and for 6 days it was like this. So I felt like I was, there, and I was learning, and I every day. And so and I was in an environment that I have never been in, and she had never been in. There was no hiking trail, so we were following wildlife trails or
Mhm.
bushwhacking like crazy. I had never done this before, and it was hard. I mean, it was hard in the sense it was not comfortable every day all the time, but the sense of going to a place that is quote unquote untouched, and just kind of uh, with my sketchbook and sketch whatever I wanted, was just I felt like I was lucky. I was I didn't know well what I did to deserve this, but I told my friend Andrea, I said, I'll do that any day. I don't
Yeah.
want to be paid. I want to do this. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this is just fun, and also the way people reacted to the drawings
Mhm.
within the CSU organization that is taking care of those surveys. But also when I posted the drawing, and to see people are interested in the environment, they're interested in wild places. But I also realized that some people are just scared. They're just scared to go to wild places.
Mhm.
I mean, we knew that area had bears, so I mean, we were prepared. But some people were, before I left, they're like, "You're gonna be 6 days in a remote place with bears around. You're not." I'm like, "Well, we'll be okay." I mean, I hope. It's- I think you can do things somewhat safely without being totally stupid about it.
Mhm.
uh, and Andrea is somebody who has done that so many times that I felt like, I'm with this girl who is 5 foot tall and is just like the most badass person. I felt like, oh, she is my bodyguard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's neat. I remember you telling me about the experience before it happened, and I could tell you were excited that
Yeah,
this was your dream experience. And
yeah,
yeah, your drawings were so cool, and the fact that they were also part of a survey of species and
yeah,
documenting again, just a cool way to combine your passion, your ability, your artwork into something meaningful to this conservation initiative that the state is putting on with
yeah.
developing this new state park.
It is
I've
beautiful.
also seen another way your artwork really touches the world of not just conservation, but of adventure, of getting outdoors, experiencing, exploring, leaving comfort zones and getting outside, is through through the artwork you have donated to various good causes. Many of those pieces end up on t-shirts. And
That's
I think there's going to be a club of collectors of Sophie Binder t-shirts because they're fantastic. I speak for Panji. You designed one of your pieces that you did was a snow leopard, and we used it on our Panji t-shirts. You've done similar artwork of mountains for the Access Fund, or so many other uh, original pieces of art that end up on t-shirts. And I just love that. It's the Sophie Binder Club of t-shirt artwork. But that brings me to, and you mentioned this briefly a little bit, but it brings me to wanting to talk a little bit about this gorgeous thing you do that is wood burning. And you use I don't know what you use a pen and it burns wood, and then you paint it with watercolor. How did you how did you start this? Did you know what you were getting into, or did you just
No, I had
experiment?
no idea. It came from a discussion I had with an artist friend here in St. Louis, and I I'm trying to remember when it was, but it had to be a good maybe 6 years ago, around that time, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe. And we were talking about art, and I don't know, I cannot remember how the subject of wood burning itself came, but for some reason it hit a chord, and I was thinking, huh, this might be something fun to explore. I like line. My sketching style is very line oriented, and so, and wood is something that in my family is very important. My dad was an amazing cabinet maker, and so I grew up with my dad working in his woodworking shop. My only regret is I never learned from him how to work wood. But anyway, that smell of wood, my dad was talking to trees because he loved wood so much. So wood is important. So I thought, well, okay, I'll try. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I went and bought like the $20 big fat, wood burning thing, and didn't know what wood. So I looked at home what I had, like old shelves and stuff like this. So I started to do it actually on oak, which is it's terrible to work on because the grain is just too, it's not tight enough. But I did a few pieces, and I was just, this is interesting. I'm liking this. So I started to kind of look at wood and see what I could find that would be better. And I discovered maple. I mean, not that it was not discovered before, but for me, it was a discovery.
Mhm.
And realized that it's a very hard wood. And very quickly, as I was doing this wood burning, I was just, well, I'm loving this wood burning, but watercolor is really what I love too. Could I just maybe put the two together? And so at first I was thinking, well, I would have to probably put something on the wood for the watercolor to take. But then I love the transparency of watercolor and that it shows the wood through. So I just started to experiment. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so much trial and error, but I started to really get into the detail and the line and the way that line is alive, because it's almost like a conversation with the wood, because the wood just reacts to the heat. And so sometimes it's darker, sometimes it's lighter, and as I started to perfect it, I started to know, how to push harder on
Mhm.
that. And then I just decided the $20 tool I was using was not that great. It would take 10 minutes for the tool to heat up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it was just one heat. So I fished out $100 and got a better tool, and never looked back. And then I just went off and started to do more and more, started to do multi-panel pieces, because the more I go, the more I want to do bigger, even if it's extremely time consuming. Especially the way I do it. I do not like, there is wood burning technique where people literally have areas of total dark where they just burn the wood. And I just proceed by lines. So my lines are either tighter or darker or lighter, or and then, so I produced a lot of mountainscapes, had a lot of fun with playing on watercolor on wood, which is extremely challenging. It's a huge amount of layers over layers over
Mhm.
layers, which is not a normal way to work watercolor. But I think that's, one more time, that was a fun way to explore something that I didn't know anything about. And yeah.
Do you think that aspect of your personality, do you, when you put down your pen and you pick up your climbing rack and you head out to the crag, is that facet of your personality still what drives you to enjoy rock climbing? And is do you feel this same emotional connection to the immediacy of the texture of rock or whatever it may be that you do when you're visualizing and painting a bird. It seems to flow to me, but is that how it feels to you?
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. I compare art and climbing all the time.
Hmm.
The insecurity, the sometimes the fear of, oh, should I do this or should I not do this? I have this with art all the time, and the excitement of starting a new piece. I don't sometimes don't totally visualize. Like right now, I have an idea for something new that I want to do, and I cannot start it for some reason. There is something right now that is just not there.
Yeah.
So I've learned to be patient with it. I think with climbing, it's the same. I've had routes that scared me, and so it was not the right day or whatever. I wouldn't do it, and then one day it just feels good. Things are aligned, and
Hmm.
then you go for it.
Hmm.
So yes, there's a lot of parallels, and I think the sense of uh, and forgiveness, in the sense, like the mediums that I've chosen in art are unforgiving. Like watercolor, you can't really go back and go back and go back. Even on wood, it's layers, but once it's on, you can't really erase it or whatever.
Yeah.
Wood burning, there is no erasing. Or maybe with a big, sander.
I'm not sure I've ever seen any of your artwork that has even a shadow of a mistake. So I don't I
Oh,
don't know how to I don't know whether to believe you or not. I think you're just pretty damn good.
oh, I don't know. I know how to hide my mistakes.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
I have this discussion with the same friend, actually, that I started this discussion about wood burning. Um, he's a wonderful artist, but he does work with pencil. He does work with actually erasing is part of what he does too, and it's part of his work, and I admire it. But I am like the opposite of this. I never erase.
Mhm.
When I sketch with a pen, and so ink pen. So mistake, whatever. So my eraser are in very good shape because I don't use them a lot.
And when you start these wood burning pieces, you don't draw them first. You just pick up this hot pen and start.
I I draw, like, I will draw, like, if it's a mountainscape, I will draw the big outline
Hmm.
just to know where I'm going, if you will, as far as
Yeah.
the overall. But yeah, then I go and I just draw. With portraits is the same thing. For a portrait, I will draw the outline. Uh, the only portrait where I drew actually a little bit more in detail was my mother's portrait. Her mouth had an expression on it that was so tight, so slight, and I was so scared of it that I put actually more pencil line that I've ever did before, just to make sure,
Yeah.
because it is, yeah, I mean, there is an emotional moment. You're like, okay, well, I gotta go for it, and then you see the line, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can I have something on the fire. Can I just go?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're right
Yeah.
back. Sorry.
I'm imagining like your stovetop in flames and
No,
you're
I'm making curry. I'm making a big curry for, like, the
nice.
kids feed me the
Nice.
entire.
You know, that brings up another quick topic of how your artwork and your tendency interests in adventure have combined again and again. You mentioned curry, you're making curry. What was your journey across Asia? And of course, I think about you rode your bike across Nepal. Like that's not something small. That's not something people who are easily scared just say, yeah, I'm going to ride my bike through the Himalayas. And then you produced a book of artwork from that journey. And again, I go back to what a beautiful connection, whether it was intended or not, between your passion, adventure, artwork, and how that affects beautiful, often threatened places around the world. the Himalayas produce something like 20% of the world's fresh water.
Yeah.
And every day the risk of that water not being there is greater and greater.
Yeah.
Nepal, for example, is sandwiched between these mega powers of China and India. There's not just natural threats, there's geopolitical threats to these very special areas.
Right.
So your book and your experience really impacts this beautiful area in the world in positive ways. How was that adventure?
Well, adventure, yeah, it was a longer trip. So it was a trip through 16 different countries around the globe that I did in 2001, 2002, and talking about having an idea in your head and that idea just sticking. It was something that I wanted to do for a long, long time because I had done some some trips on my bike, just shorter, 15 days here, a week there, and realize what a perfect combination with sketching. It's a slow mode of transportation. I can stop anywhere. I'm much more, there's an intimacy between, you and whatever surrounds you when you're on the bicycle compared to being in the case of a car
Mm-hmm.
with windows and stuff. So I started to think bigger and read a lot of books, adventure books and books of people who have gone around the world. And I thought, well, I can do that on my bike. Why not? And yeah, let me tell you, when I first talked about this to a few people, the people who knew me, they were like, this is going to be great. People who didn't know me as well were like, you're crazy. It's dangerous, and it's very interesting to me that it it is people's reaction. It's that first thing that comes. It's safety. And I'm not saying it's not a bad thing to be in touch with safety and to just be careful.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had been fearful of everything, I would never have done that trip. And so I went, I went to some areas that, people would think is crazy because I went through the Middle East. I went through Nepal, who had problems too, the India. And in the Middle East, people thought I was absolutely nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of my favorite areas. But, nevertheless, so that was, yeah, it was the trip of a lifetime. It was absolutely not what I thought it would be in a good way. It's like you romanticize thing. You just gonna be so great, and there's moments that are so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I was doing that by myself, so there is loneliness. There is, but also the fact that you're by yourself. You're meeting so many people, and people want to talk to you. And art, that's where art comes. Is I would sketch a lot. I would sketch every day and stop on the roadside or in the small town, and people just
Mm-hmm.
congregated around me and wanted to ask me questions, look at the drawing. Kids, I had a map with me, so it was great because I could show kids what I was doing, and I could show them where they lived. And a lot of kids in small villages in Asia had no idea what they were looking at. I was showing them this thing with a weird shape, and I said, "This is your country. This is where you live." And they were just like, "What?"
Yeah, yeah.
So I think you don't get this by traveling in hotels, and you don't get this by having your 15 days of vacation or week of vacation planned out. So does it take more risk? Yeah, sure. But I don't know, you become kind of savvy in knowing how to balance the being stupid and being adventurous.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a woman traveling by myself, I knew I had to be careful, and but it was not on my mind all the time. I mean, half of the Middle East wanted to get myself to for me to be married to somebody because
Yeah.
so I had a ring with me just in case. I'm like, I'm married. And people are like, can your husband let you go on your own like this?
Yeah. Yeah.
That would lead to some really interesting conversations. And
That's fantastic.
I loved
What
it.
what's what's next for you?
Oh my God. See, that's interesting because during this pandemic, especially, uh, I've been thinking, man, I've become too sedentary. I need to go off again. I do have some ideas about some trips. You know, I would love to go on the Silk Road
Mhm.
through Asia. Um, would love to go to South America as well. Um, I don't have a precise idea right now of what I'm want to do, but I definitely want to travel more. I miss it. I really do. I miss not knowing what's going to happen the next day. And
Mhm.
on this bike trip, that was one of the best thing that was about that trip is that I didn't reserve anything. I didn't know where I was going to sleep the day after. Sometimes I would camp, sometimes people invite me,
Mhm.
and it allowed me to be flexible, to meet amazing people, to see like generosity is of people in general is amazing. Um and Yeah, so yeah, I do miss that. I really miss that a lot. So I'm hopefully a lot of art too. It's this year has been difficult in many ways, but um my motivation somehow right now is I don't know, is shaky. And so
You say that, and I almost laughed out loud. You say it's shaky, but you're coming up on 365 days straight of
yeah,
beautiful creative work.
thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we put our standards where we put them, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm thankful for that. I think this is why I'm proud that I did this, because I think if I hadn't had that this year, it would feel more empty. Even if I produce some work, this and some art, but sometimes I feel, oh my God, I could have produced like twice as much, you know. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's,
Hey,
it's
where
eternal. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
where can people see your work or learn more about you? You know, website or
Yeah, I would say my
any place we
website.
can direct them.
My website, it's www.sbinderdesigns or sbinderdesigns or sbanderdesigns.com. There is a lot of my work there. I actually have three pieces in the gallery right now in St. Louis, which includes something else that is a totally different thing. Is a backgammon set that I wood burned.
Oh, wow.
So it's another endeavor into something more three dimensional.
Mhm.
And that totally made me channel my dad, because I had to build a box, and I realized
Yeah.
boxes are very difficult to build. um, and I've loved that. I've got onto this thing of making games, and I'm board games, and I'm
Mhm.
actually about to start to work on a kind of an old-fashioned French game called the Game of the Goose that is going to be wood burned too. And one more time, this is fun for me to just not stick with just one thing.
Yeah.
I think I would be bored if I would stick with either one subject or one medium. Um, and it's there is exploration in everything, you know. It's not just yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you ever intended or expected your work through the medium of art to have positive impact on conservation, on exploration, on adventure. Uh, what would you tell a little kid who maybe doesn't feel they can have positive impact in wild places in the great outdoors, what would I don't know, would you say anything to them? What are your thoughts on that?
A little kid, it's funny. I would tell little kids to go in outdoor space and get away from their phone and their TV set, and to let the outdoor space just kind of dictate what they could do with
Hmm.
it. I don't know if I'm clear with this. Is I saw my great nephews several years ago. We were at Red Rock, and those kids, we were in the desert. Okay, there was nothing around but rock, and this little kid, he was 6 or 7 at the time. He looked around and he noticed that the rock had a certain shape, that he could make something out of it, and he made this sand waterfall, this sand fall, this sand cascade with different sand of different colors, and he poured them in it, and then the sand went into that rock that had this kind of gutter thing and just created this beautiful. And I was mesmerized by this because I was thinking, this is a kid who, he knows how to observe what is around him and just make something out of it, or act on it, or and so I would tell the kid, either if you do something like this, or if kids like to draw,
Hmm.
and I think, people say, oh, I don't know how to draw. Like, take a pen, take a pencil and try it, and who's going to judge you? Because drawing makes you sit somewhere and makes you observe, and
Nice.
it will make you see things the way that you don't, unless you, like, a professional photographer would understand that, because you can spend a lot of time in one space trying to take, as you say, the perfect shot. But if you're just taking pictures like snapshot, you don't, you
Hmm.
just take a shot and you move on. And so that's one of my favorite thing about drawing in the outdoors, is that it makes me pause, just slow down
Hmm.
in this world where everything has to be instant and fast, and so, yeah, I would tell a kid, leave the all the electronics, in the car or whatever, and just, run into the field and see.
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
or
That's great. I like the way you encapsulated that and articulated that. That's great. Well, Sophie, it's always wonderful to see your face and to
This
talk.
is great.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for taking the time to talk. And
Oh, yeah,
I
I
look
hope we can do
forward
it in
to
person soon.
yeah, I was gonna say one of these days we'll see each other in person again. And I look
Yeah, I
forward to it.
hope I hope to make it out west sometimes in the summer. So,
Good,
um,
good.
I'll keep you
All
posted.
right, Sophie, thanks
All
so
right,
much.
right. Okay,
See ya.
bye.
See ya.